Any questions? We do have a roving mic, so I will ask. You're just going to put up your hand and we'll get a mic to you. Wow. Great.
Yeah.
Good. Just bear with me one sec. Yeah. Well, at least that everybody can hear it.
Right. In our organisation, we're starting to use storytelling quite a bit, but what we're trying to do is engage our employees to tell their own stories. And I'm just wondering if you've helped any other organisations do that, and any tips you could.
That's really what we do. It's not just about creating the corporate narrative. It's ultimately, if you remember, I said it's about helping people feel heroes of a story and playing out that narrative. It's about getting them to tell their own stories, because in that way you can amplify what good looks like and make them feel that they are part of this story, that they're truly living it out. So all of our work, all of our 160 clients that we've worked with, is about ultimately getting to those employee stories and getting them to share them, but very importantly being able to link them back to a strategic narrative, so that they're not just random stories, but they have a purpose, they have a point. And that they're stories that are strategically important, even though they're just small little stories. I could tell you hundreds of stories that we've heard that some of them are hilarious, but that's really what it's all about, is getting the employees involved in this story.
And it's really very much also about creating opportunities for them to bring their stories forward. And that's, again, bringing it back into the brand story. It's about how you create those opportunities that will allow you to capture them, but also articulating where they fit into the brand story.
Yeah.
You know, at what part of the journey are they, but how it actually is part of your brand personality.
So I think at the moment it's more they see it as another thing they need to do, because we're asking them to start to think about it, and we're asking them to think about how they're linking what they're doing on a day-to-day basis based on the strategic
you need to have that strategic hook, something for them to hang their stories off. We did a fantastic piece of work with the Wynn in Las Vegas. I don't know if anyone's been to the Wynn in Las Vegas, but Steve Wynn called us. This is in our very early days when we didn't even have a love office in London, and I was thinking, it's 6 o'clock, time for a glass of wine, and Steve's secretary rang and said, "Can you get over here? I think we need you." And he had just started this new resort with 9,000 new employees. And we created a story like that for him. And then they created an internal campaign, a poster campaign. So all of the bellboys, the florists, the chefs, the restaurant managers, the chambermaids, the front desk, everyone in the business celebrated the small little things they were doing for their customers, because it was all about creating an experience so guests would never want to leave and spend their money in the Bellagio. So it was all about employee stories, and they had this rolling internal communications, or a sort of internal poster campaign back of house, where the great things that every single person was doing. These are really tiny little stories about somebody who showed a couple, they were on their way out, clocking off for the day, and they took some time to show a couple where the ballroom was. I mean, these are really small events, but it's about creating this sense of we're all in this together and we're all playing our little part, however small it might be. It's inspiring.
And again, the word inspiring, I mean, that's where when somebody who truly is participant in the story, they inspire others. You only made me just think of something. One of the hotels we were working in, they were trying to sell the ballrooms, and then we got somebody who is the historian, a kind of storyteller within the business, to talk about the chandeliers. And when he told the story of the chandeliers, every salesperson in that room sat captivated, and they'd been selling that ballroom for a year as room space. But what was sitting in that ballroom was the story about the crystal and the chandeliers came from Austria, and this person told the story. And all of a sudden, whenever they sold that ballroom again, that's where they began. They began with the ceiling, not the floor space. So really think about, it's not always just asking for the stories from people, it's how we translate them for them. Because maybe in the early days, they don't believe that those stories are important. But when you make them part of the public, the part of the public in the brand story, all of a sudden they become that participant. And then they want to tell their stories. Because that popsicle story went like wildfire through that hotel. He thought he was selling popsicles or giving popsicles away. He was giving memories away. but it took someone else to translate it for him. And then other people started telling their stories in the same narrative about how they give memories to other people.
I'm quite interested, Alison, in how you gather the stories, because invariably employees are quite shy and they don't always know what a story is, and they don't necessarily think what they've done is particularly important. So do you have particular interventions?
Yeah.
Or you interview? Or
Yeah.
does that work?
Well, the way we don't do it, but we show leaders how to do it, and we also create ambassador networks in organisations. So the ambassador's job is to go and, like sniffer dogs, go and find these stories. The way to get the stories in the first place is not to artificially ask for them, because people then go, oh, I don't know. You need to get them through like a bit of a Trojan horse by starting team conversations that start to look at that corporate narrative to say, what are we doing in our part of the business to contribute? Think of a time when, and through leaders are having dialogue and conversation with their teams, they can start to tease out some of the stories that people in very small groups will start to come up with. So we train leaders on how to have a type of conversation that allows them to winkle out the stories from people without them feeling that they're being asked to tell a story. They're just example. I'll give you an example. We worked with Parcel Force quite a long time ago, and they had these kind of 15-minute sort of team meetings, if you like, and they'd get the story out and they'd look at, you know, the priorities in chapter 5 and what are we doing. And one of their priorities was work smarter. Well, that could mean anything. So this depot in Oxford, they were having their team meeting, and someone said, he said, you need to get Stannard onto his, Kevin Stannard, he does spreadsheets, he'll do work smarter, he's got lots of ideas about how we can work smarter. So Kevin Stannard, who was this very quiet little man who just had a hobby of spreadsheets, they actually got him to come up with this new spreadsheet that was going to save that particular depot a few £1,000s, and he did. And what happened was that, but through the story sharing mechanism that we helped them set up, they decided that spreadsheet was such a brilliant idea that the whole of the group needed to do it. And they saved several £1,000,000, and it's now called the Stannard Report. I don't know what they rewarded him with, probably about a £25 gift voucher for a meal out, but you know, because that's what they were like. But the idea is that it was through the conversations they were having at that 15-minute team meeting that somebody came up with this bright idea about Stannard. They sent him off, and then he came back with it, and that is a story. So there are lots of different ways of doing it, but it is one of the to try and manufacture it is very artificial, and doesn't feel real. So you kind of got to do it as a natural course of conversation, and dialogue and team conversations are good things to have. So that's how you get them out.
Robert, what kind of data inputs do you use to infer where someone is on the motivation curve? I can't imagine how you do that without them telling you.
Well, you might look at how quickly they respond, or the type of language they might use.
So it has to be response-based in some way?
Yeah, or if they don't respond. So if you expect that somebody might respond within a certain period, or you could look at an average and say, like, well, most people are responding this time, this person isn't, or he just isn't doing anything. So yeah, so it's mainly about timing and frequency. That's how you would look.
In the sort of episodic sequence of storytelling that you're describing, which is moving between platforms as well, do you suffer from what you might describe as story sag, where things dip? Because I know I work in film where you have a linear progress of a story and you capture the attention and you keep it right way through to the end. But in your situation, you're dealing with both reality, virtual, and flipping between the two on a sort of constant basis. So do you suffer from that as a problem, or is it not an issue?
So the way that we look to do it is to think of it in different levels, so you don't have like a toll gate. So it's not like you watch the video and then you must disappear off onto Twitter or disappear off and read the book and then you can come back to video. So if you wanted to just watch all the videos. You could just sit and watch all the videos, and that tells like the normal story arc. But then on other platforms, we would have other types of engagement. So they, you know, like in a game, it would be like a side quest or something. So there could be some other story that deepens, you know, like there could be a time period that's not explored very much in the video, so it's just, you know, referenced. But then on another platform, it could open out into something much bigger, so that then, let's say by video 3, let's say this started in video 1, by video 3 or 4, somebody that hadn't looked at these other platforms, no problem, they still get the same story, but anyone who had engaged on that other platform gets a bigger kind of payoff. So I'll give you an example of that. It was a long time ago, but my wife and I, we used to watch Project Runway or Project Catwalk, whatever it's called, with the fashion designer. So it's like a reality show, and there was a sister program to it about the models, which I was not interested in. So my wife used to watch the other one. I was more interested in the design bit. So then we were watching this episode one time, and a guy gets called out, and my wife went, "Ah!" because she knew exactly what was going to, you know, what the story was going to be, because she'd watched the other channel. So for me, there was the suspense and everything, but for her, she had a different experience. And that's the type of situation you want to set up, that no one feels penalised because they've not been on these other platforms. And it kind of depends what you're doing. I mean, if you know, if you're trying to fit around someone's day, then you might decide that, you know, someone's responding more on text messaging, it fits into the way that they, you know, interact much better than email, for example. So it depends.
I'm interested in the example you gave about using it for recruitment, and because we have a franchise organisation, and at the moment it's mostly based in the UK, but we're spreading US, and really where anybody hears about us, if they're interested, they might get in touch. How does the actual moderating, and I presume they found it successful,
yes,
otherwise they wouldn't do it. What kind of things have you observed of the observers in the process, and the quality of people that end up being recruited?
So what happens is there's like a pre-screening questionnaire. So people go online and they sort of register. They say if they want to be interviewed or whatever, and then they pick people to go along to this 2-hour experience. And the facilitator, she has prompts that come up on her tablet. So everybody comes in, they normally do it 25 at a time in teams of 5. And each team of 5 has its own observer. And then there's a facilitator which oversees all 25. So what happens is she explains what's going to happen. And then when she presses a button, the process kicks off, like the first story nugget, you know, the first sort of plot point. And then as the teams interact, the observers and the mediator are told what sort of behaviours they want that is consistent with that organisation. So if they're like a results orientated company, then there's certain solutions that they're looking for from these participants based on the story, that would indicate that this is a results-orientated person and not someone that was more, I don't know, let's say people-based. I mean, I'm not an expert in that area, but there's like 5 different culture types. And what they do is they select the game based on the culture type for that particular organisation. So, you know, that's all in the sort of the pre-analysis with a client, what is it you're looking for, and then they go through. So, what it's allowed them to do is scale their knowledge. So rather than have one consultant that is the only one that can run these types of exercises, now they can sort of get lots more people, and sometimes they get clients to run it as well, because the knowledge and stuff that they're looking for is all kind of scripted for them.
And so is it online that do you have to be operating in the same physical space, or potentially they could be tuning? Potentially
they could be anywhere, but because it's all web-based, but physically they do it all in one, because I think it's part of their whole recruitment thing. So they get them in, and they give them a spiel, and then they set them the task, and then all the observers and the facilitator have a wash-up session at the end. So as they've been going through, they've been sort of scoring people, and then they have a discussion and they have a ranking, and then they decide, you know, who are the top and who are the not so good.
And have they found it positive in terms of the quality?
Oh yeah, they love it, yeah. And what they're doing now is they're selling it to other management companies. Like, so they've them and us developed this experience. So they're the subject matter experts, we're the technology engagement sort of people. So we've developed it, and now what they're doing is they're going around to other consultancies, selling it to them so that they've got like a new business tool that they can sell in.